Most people do not hide who they are. They reveal it quietly, not through what they say, but through who they surround themselves with, through how they react when things do not go their way, through what they repeat and what they avoid. You have seen this before. Someone speaks kindly, but their actions feel wrong. Someone sounds confident, but their life never moves forward. And still, we keep listening to words. Because words are comfortable. They give us excuses. They delay the truth. But there is a reason certain patterns keep repeating in your life. The same disappointments, the same misunderstandings, the same people showing you who they are again and again. The question is not why this happens. The real question is why you keep ignoring it. After a while, you begin to notice something uncomfortable. People are far more consistent than they pretend to be. They may change their tone. They may change their stories, but their patterns stay almost untouched. A person who avoids responsibility will always find a reason. A person who seeks control will always test boundaries. A person who lacks direction will talk about dreams but never about action. This is not because they are bad. It is because habits are easier than truth. Most people live on repetition. They repeat reactions. They repeat excuses. They repeat the same emotional shortcuts year after year without questioning them. And that is why listening too closely to words is dangerous. Words are flexible. They adapt to the moment. They say what sounds right, not what is right. Behavior is different. Behavior has weight. It costs energy. It exposes intention. That is why silence often reveals more than explanation. When someone is calm under pressure, you learn something. When someone becomes defensive over small things, you learn something else. You do not need confrontation to understand people. You only need observation. This is where most mistakes are made. We rush to interpret. We rush to forgive. We rush to assign meaning where none has been earned. Instead of watching how someone handles discomfort, we listen to how well they justify it. Instead of noticing consistency, we focus on charm. And slowly, without realizing it, we hand over control, not to another person, but to our own willingness to ignore what is obvious. There is a quiet discipline in simply paying attention, in noticing who respects time, who respects boundaries, who remains steady when attention disappears. This discipline does not make life easier. It makes it clearer. And clarity has a cost. Because once you see patterns, you cannot unsee them. Once you understand behavior, excuses lose their power. This is why awareness feels heavy at first. It removes comfort. It removes fantasy. But it gives something stronger in return. It gives you the ability to choose wisely. What most people fear is not being seen. It is being seen clearly. Clarity removes the masks we rely on to feel safe. It exposes the distance between who we present and who we actually are. This is why silence makes people uncomfortable. Silence offers no protection, no distraction, no immediate escape. When words disappear, behavior becomes louder. And behavior rarely lies. Pay attention to how someone handles moments they cannot control. A delayed response, a disagreement, a situation where they gain nothing. These moments reveal the true center of a person. Not their values, but their instincts. Some react with patience, others with irritation. Some withdraw, others seek dominance. None of this happens by accident. These reactions are rehearsed through years of unexamined habits. The ego plays a quiet but powerful role here. It does not announce itself. It protects itself. When challenged, the ego looks for shortcuts. Blame, deflection, justification. This is why people often speak the loudest when they feel the weakest. Noise becomes armor. Certainty becomes a shield. Self-control, on the other hand, rarely needs to prove itself. It moves slowly, It leaves space. It does not rush to be understood, and this creates an important difference. Those who control their reactions control their direction. Those who do not are carried by circumstances they refuse to examine. Most people believe awareness is passive. It is not. It requires restraint. Restraint from reacting. Restraint from correcting. Restraint from needing to be right. This is why emotional discipline feels lonely at first. You speak less. You explain less. You stop participating in unnecessary conflict. And in that quiet, something shifts. You begin to see how often tension is self-created. How often conflict exists only because someone needed validation. How rarely calm is chosen when attention is available. Understanding this does not make you superior. It makes you careful. Because once you understand human behavior, you also understand responsibility. Not for others, but for your own choices. There is a moment when observation turns into responsibility. It happens quietly, and once it happens, there is no return. At first, you notice patterns in others. Later, you begin to notice them in yourself. This is where most people stop. Not because they cannot see, but because seeing demands change. The truth is simple, but not easy to accept. You are not surrounded by random behavior. You are surrounded by predictable systems. Human behavior follows structure, not logic. Structure. People repeat what once protected them. Silence, aggression, charm, withdrawal. Each of these is a survival strategy learned early, reinforced often, and rarely questioned. This is why the same types of conflicts keep appearing in your life. Not because fate is unfair, but because familiarity feels safer than uncertainty. Consider this carefully. When someone avoids accountability, they are not confused. They are protecting an identity that cannot survive honesty. When someone constantly seeks validation, they are not confident. They are afraid of disappearing without attention. When someone dominates conversations, they are not strong. They are insecure in silence. And when someone stays calm without needing to explain themselves, they are not indifferent. They are grounded. These are not moral judgments. They are behavioral truths. The mistake most people make is thinking awareness alone is enough. It is not. Awareness without action becomes frustration. Action without awareness becomes chaos. This is where discipline enters. Discipline is not control over others. It is control over response. The ability to pause when emotion demands reaction. The ability to withhold explanation when ego seeks defense. The ability to walk away when attention offers nothing of value. This level of control feels unnatural at first, because it removes the reward most people live on. Reaction. Reaction gives instant relief. It releases tension. It creates the illusion of power, but it also gives away position. Every time you react without intention, you teach others how to access you. Your triggers become predictable. Your boundaries become negotiable. This is why silence is often misunderstood. People assume it means weakness. In reality, it means selection. You are choosing where your energy goes and where it does not. There is another uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Your environment shapes you more than your intentions ever will. You may believe you are independent, but behavior is contagious. Spend enough time around chaos and your nervous system adapts. Spend enough time around superficial thinking and depth begins to feel heavy. This is why growth often feels like isolation, not because you have changed, but because your tolerance has. You no longer find the same conversations stimulating. The same conflicts feel unnecessary. The same dynamics feel exhausting. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. But alignment has a cost. You lose access to spaces that once made you feel included. You lose people who preferred the version of you that reacted. And here is the hardest part. Most people do not leave because you became distant. They leave because you became clear. Clarity removes leverage. It removes emotional bargaining. It removes the unspoken agreements built on confusion. Once you stop explaining yourself, manipulation loses its entry point. Once you stop chasing, understanding control dissolves. This is why those who grow are often labeled cold, not because they lack emotion, but because they no longer perform it. They feel deeply, but they choose carefully. They listen more than they speak. They observe more than they react. They respond when necessary, not when provoked. And slowly something important changes. Your life becomes quieter, not empty, precise. You experience fewer conflicts, but more clarity. Fewer connections, but more respect. Less noise, but more direction. This is not a transformation that announces itself. It shows up in small decisions. Who you respond to, what you tolerate, where you invest attention. Most people wait for confidence to appear before they act differently. In reality, confidence is built through restraint. Every time you choose not to react, you strengthen it. Every time you choose observation over impulse, you sharpen it. And eventually, the world responds differently. Not because you demanded respect, but because your behavior made it unavoidable. This is the quiet power most people never reach. Not because it is hidden, but because it requires discipline over comfort. And comfort is the one thing most people are unwilling to release. When this shift begins, it rarely announces itself in dramatic ways. It shows up in ordinary moments, in conversations where you no longer feel the need to fill silence, in relationships where you stop explaining why something matters to you, in situations where walking away feels cleaner than proving a point. This is where the philosophy becomes real. In relationships, you start noticing imbalance faster. Who listens? Who waits? Who only appears when they need something? You no longer argue to restore harmony. You observe to understand reality. In solitude, the change is even clearer. Being alone no longer feels like absence. It feels like space. Space to think without interruption. Space to notice what you actually value. Space to recover from years of reacting instead of choosing. Power dynamics also shift quietly, not because you seek control, but because you stop offering access. When you no longer react to provocation, provocation loses purpose. When you stop negotiating your boundaries, they become visible. This does not make life easier. It makes it simpler. Some connections fade. Some conversations end sooner. Some invitations stop coming. But what remains has weight. Respect replaces familiarity. Clarity replaces tension. Presence replaces noise. There is a common misunderstanding here. That detachment means indifference. It does not. It means involvement without entanglement. Care without dependence. Strength without display. You still feel disappointment. You still feel frustration. But you no longer build your identity around managing them. This is why inner conflict begins to dissolve. Not because problems disappear, but because fewer things deserve your reaction. And slowly, you realize something important. Most of your exhaustion did not come from effort. It came from resistance, from trying to correct what was never listening, from explaining what was never seeking understanding, from staying where growth was not possible. Letting go of that does not feel like victory. It feels like relief. Eventually, everything becomes quieter, not because the world changes, but because you stop responding to everything it offers. You notice how little of what once demanded your attention actually mattered. How many reactions were habits? How many conflicts were invitations you never had to accept? Clarity does not arrive as confidence. It arrives as restraint. You pause more. You speak less. You let people show you who they are without interruption. And something subtle happens. You no longer feel the need to correct misunderstandings that do not affect your direction. You no longer chase explanations from people who avoid responsibility. You no longer confuse intensity with importance. What remains is not perfection. It is precision. You choose carefully where your energy goes. Who has access? What deserves response? This does not make you distant. It makes you intentional. Most people will never notice this change. And that is fine. The work was never about being seen. It was about seeing clearly. And once you do, you will understand why silence was never empty. It was preparing you